Welcome back, everyone. My name is Kevin. It's so good to be here with you today. And guess what? We are back at school because today we are going to learn how to unlearn some of the things that we have had to learn, which has caused narcissistic abuse to take place in our lives. Let's get into it. My name is Kevin, and this is... Now that before I begin, let me remind you that I'm here to support you. Down in the description box right below this video, you'll find access for one-on-one appointments with me. I do take telephone calls and video calls through Zoom, FaceTime, and WhatsApp. You do not have to deal with narcissistic abuse alone. Head on down to the description box, schedule some one-on-one time with me. Let's talk about what you're going through. Now then, we're going to talk about this place right here, public institutionalized education. And as a bonus, I'm also going to be talking a little bit about this right here. And this is the Bible. But we're not just going to be talking about the Bible. We're going to be talking about organized religion in this message because, believe it or not, organized religion and public institutionalized education both have something in common in that both have contributed to your experience of narcissistic abuse. Let's go. If you're ready, get your backpack on because we're going back to school. Go ahead and put that thing on, turn around, give it a shake. Hey, eyes up here. Backpack's right there. Come on. Now here's a fun fact for you. We oftentimes refer to public schooling as institutionalized education, but do you know what else goes by institutionalized? How about prison, for one? How about mental hospitalization, for two? And I guess public schooling is kind of the best of both worlds. Now, I do want to make sure that you know that I'm not here to attack education in general. Education is good. We all need to learn how to read and write and spell and know that A plus B equals C and this, that, and the other thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. That is super important. However, it's the way in which it's done through public institutionalized education that causes people, just like you, like me, most empathic people, to walk right smack into toxic relationships, to endure toxic relationships, to become people pleasers. And well, we're going to go on with more of that. You'll see exactly what I'm talking about. When it comes to institutionalized education, what is institutionalization? What does that even mean? That's a good question. Institutionalized is basically an organized way of relaying information. The powers that be, or whoever decides what's good, what isn't good, what should be taught, what shouldn't be taught, what people need to know, how they need to know it, what they need to do, and how they need to do it. If you think about it, it's kind of what happens in toxic narcissistic family dynamics, right? You've got those at the top who tell everybody in the family how things ought to be and what gets swept under the rug and what we talk about and what we don't talk about. And this is just how the family operates. Well, it's really no different within institutionalized education. So point number one is all about how public institutionalized education likes to put people in a box that requires them to look towards others to identify their purpose and their calling and what they need to know in this life and even what kinds of questions they can ask, right? That's point number one. Point number two is a real doozy. What is point number two here? All right, let's have a seat here. Point number two is this. Now then, we know that in public schooling, there's a lot of kids in a class, right? So it makes sense that they would have to have some discipline, obviously, for obvious reasons, right? Otherwise, a classroom would just be chaotic, kids swinging from the chandeliers, right? However, when you think about the way in which the classroom is structured and how kids have to raise their hands to ask questions and to speak and even to use the damn bathroom, this by its very nature, by default, teaches children that you really have to submit and become very passive and passively approach just about any situation. You passively approach your superior to ask a question. You passively approach later on in life your boss. I mean, how many of you have gone to get a job and you applied and you didn't go in there and say, this is my value, this is the work I can do, and this is what I'm worth. Instead, you applied for the job, hope you got it, and the boss said, well, this is what I'm going to pay you. A year later, you come stumbling in saying, boss, I've been here a year, and if I may, boss, I've been here a year, I've worked hard, and can I have a 25-cent raise, please? And you're at the mercy of the boss already just by the way in which you're asking the question. And now that might be an exaggerated way of doing it, but I believe you get the point. We are conditioned through public institutionalized education to raise our hands and to submit ourselves in this way to ask questions just like that. Now, this also translates into toxic relationships with narcissistic people. Ultimately, what happens, and this is especially true for empathic types of personalities, because we're people pleasers by our nature, and I don't mean that in a negative way. We are drawn to fix problems and to help solve problems and to make sure that everybody feels good in our presence. And so by our nature, we enter into toxic relationships, and anybody who's more overbearing and a little bit more demanding, we have a tendency to try to submit, right? Until now, right? If you follow the royal we, now you know that we don't submit to nobody. You know what I'm saying? But thanks to public institutionalized education, the ones who are loud and overbearing and most resemble the teachers, you start to raise your hand. And so if you're in a relationship with a toxic person who is giving you a difficult time, telling you that you're a failure and you're not going to pass in this life and you're not going to find anybody else, you're liable to want to sit back in your chair like you did in elementary school and raise your hand. Can I say something? Can I get a word in, please? Can I use the restroom? I just don't want to listen to this narcissistic rage any longer. And this is a consequence of feeling like you have to raise your hand to ask permission to even speak within a toxic relationship, all because it was learned and taught to you in public institutionalized education. You see, they add on top of the toxicity of your family dynamic by helping your toxic family dynamic out and teaching you just to sit still and learn how to raise your hands if you have any concerns. You would be surprised at how many clients I have talked to over the years who have called me and said, Kevin, is it okay if I no longer talk to my toxic narcissistic mom and dad? Is it okay if I don't go to the funeral? Kevin, is it okay if I don't go to the Christmas event this year? I don't want to. I've been forcing myself to go every year. Is it okay? I find myself saying, absolutely. You have permission. And guess what? You don't need permission. You're an adult. You're 40-something years old. You're 50. You're in your 60s. You don't need permission. This is your life. You don't answer to them. You answer ultimately to your own well-being first. Do you see the problem of institutionalized education, teaching kids? Raise your hand. Ask for permission. Wait until you're called upon. Let other people tell you what to do. A lot of times people are just calling me for permission to separate from their moms, their dads, their siblings, permission to separate from the husband, the wife, permission. Is it okay, Kevin? Yes, you have permission, and you don't need permission, right? This is a real problem, all because of institutionalized education, once again, conditioning all of us youngsters growing up to be passive, to approach things passively, ask questions, wait to be called upon, let others tell us what's best for us. Now, if you liked that one, the next one is even better. The next point, let's get into it. So far, we covered two main points. All right, point number one was, what was point number one? That's right, looking towards others in order for you to know your path and your purpose. All right, it's taking the information that's given to you and accepting it as truth and not really learning how to even ask questions. You're told what questions you can ask. Point number two was what we just talked about right now, which was learning to ask permission. Two main reasons you get stuck in toxic relationships in your life. But here is yet another one. There's actually a class in session, even though the school is closed. And by the way, this class makes absolute sense. Are you ready to meet the students? Are you ready? Let's meet the students together. Come here. Hey guys. They're chickens, because this is a chicken coop. And now this chicken class makes sense. Why? Because, well, it's all chickens in there. And they all do the same thing. They scratch the ground, they eat the bugs, and they lay the eggs. And if somebody were to come in here and teach them how to be better chickens, well, they would all probably benefit from that. But now let me ask you a question. What if somebody decided to put a horse in there? What if somebody decided to put a wolf in there, or a coyote, or a lion, or a tiger? Would they all get along? Probably not. Now, what if they tried to get them all to behave like chickens? Would that work? No. Now, I don't need to continue on, but I think that you understand what I'm saying here. Public institutionalized education takes a whole farm load full of different types of creatures. And I'm not trying to be offensive when I call children creatures, but we all in a way, spiritually, mentally, and emotionally, are of a different nature. We have a different creature-esque, if you will. We are not all the same, but yet we are thrown into these public institutionalized classrooms where we are forced to behave and to learn at the same speed and the same pace as everybody else, whether you're a chicken or not. Now, I don't know about you, but I wasn't very good at being a chicken in the box, in the chicken cage that is public institutionalized education. I just didn't fit in very well. My report cards all said the same thing. Kevin's a pleasure to have in class. I'm pretty proud of that, actually. But then it said, but he's either looking out the window or he's talking to his neighbor. Right? As a consequence to all these different types of creatures being shoved into a public institutionalized class and made to compete and perform and graded on how well they all act like chickens, if the ones that are struggling or can't because their giftings are elsewhere, they're like animals that belong somewhere else, but instead they're given medicine. They're labeled and they're diagnosed as ADHD and unable to pay attention and problematic within the classroom. Do you see the problem with this? And now, if that was you in life who struggled in school, well, now you feel labeled throughout the rest of your life as this problem, when in reality, you just didn't belong in the chicken coop. You're not a chicken. You don't belong in the box with the other chicken, learning how to do what chickens do. Peck the bugs, lay the eggs, and scratch the dirt. You're made for other things. These institutions are just corralling a bunch of different animals together. Imagine a barn that brings together horses and wolves and sheep and elephants and all kinds of different things into one place and tries to get them to sit down and all learn the same damn thing. Well, it's going to be very difficult, and you're going to have some animals that just aren't going to be able to pay attention, right? The monkeys are going to be swinging on the trees, and the tigers and the lions are going to be doing whatever, and this is it. Now imagine then the barn handlers are like, you know what? Let's go and give them medication so that they can sit still. That's what we need to do. This is essentially what's going on. And now a lot of you have a problem with this understanding because you're going to say, Kevin, we're human beings, we're not animals. But who told you that we were all the same? Public institutionalized education. And by the way, there's nothing in this that helps you to understand yourself as an individual. The closest you come to understanding yourself is the people that you find within public institutionalized education that you can resonate with. The group, the clique, the friends that you start to have, this is the closest that you get to truly understanding yourself. Outside of that, it's in a classroom being forced to learn and understand the same things. And it's very, very controlling and very coercive. Yep, it's definitely one of the most deceptive things that public institutionalized education has put out there. That's that we are all the same. We're definitely not. I mean, all you have to do is open up the pages of the Bible and read how Jesus spoke about people, right? Do not throw your pearls to the what? Swine. The who? The swine. And he wasn't talking about the actual pigs. You know what I'm saying? Be as innocent as a dove. Be as shrewd as a serpent. My sheep, right? Always comparing people to different types of creatures, different types of animals, because Jesus knows something that apparently public institutionalized education doesn't know. That we all have our value in our different created nature that institutionalized education wants to strip away from people and force everybody to just become chickens in a chicken coop. All right? Yeah. That's the third point. One of the biggest deceptive lies. Now, the 3 points I covered in this message that has contributed to you experiencing narcissistic abuse is number one, you not being aware of your own path and your own purpose and your own curiosity and your own spirit and your own soul. And instead, point number one is about you being given a path, you being told what matters, you being told what's important, and then you go out and you do that, right? Get a job, pay your taxes, get married, you're told what to do. Number two is that you learn to ask permission for everything. Can I go to the bathroom? Can I have a raise? Can I do this? You learn to submit and ask permission even to get out of a toxic relationship, all because of public institutionalized education. These are things we have to unlearn. And point number 3 is that we are not all the same. You have been competing with chickens almost your entire life, beginning with public institutionalized education, right? You've been competing with other chickens on how to scratch the ground, eat the bugs, and lay eggs. It's about time that we unlearn these things and step into who you are as an individual. Discover your spirit animal, so to speak, who God has created you to be and what you are called to do while you're here, okay? Now, I do want to bring God into this, as I promised earlier. We're going to talk about the Bible, because what's interesting is that churchianity of today has a lot in common with institutionalized education, and that church has become very institutionalized. Organized religion is no different than institutionalized education. You see, they have taken the Bible, which I believe is a living word, and this is just the only point of this I'm going to talk about. So for those of you who don't like the God stuff, just stay with me. You're going to gain from this, I promise. They have taken the Bible, which is the living word of God, okay, and they have turned it into a roadmap for life. It's God's instruction manual. And as a result, most churches have formed these councils, whether it's the Baptist Council or this council or that council, and guess what they do? The same thing that public institutionalized education does. They institutionalize the way in which the Bible ought to be taught. Well, you got to get a degree and you got to interpret it this way. And guess what they've done in the process? They have stripped the ever-loving, living word out of it. Nobody who goes to church even can understand that the Bible is the living word of God. They all believe it's the roadmap. And as such, as being a roadmap for life, an instruction manual for life, it's taught a certain way. And only the people who study and go to school and learn how to decode the roadmap, only they can teach it. And so a lot of people go from public institutionalized education, where they enter into life not knowing themselves, having to ask permission for everything, and competing with a bunch of chickens. They become extremely depressed because the marriage sucks, relationship sucks, all from these things. And so as a result of being depressed, they go to church. And what do they say in church? Well, hey, part of the roadmap, this is what Jesus said. This is the instruction manual. Keep your head down, submit to your masters, keep doing your work, and in doing so, you'll be a witness for the Lord. And if you suffer greatly here, your rewards will be great in heaven. Something to that extent. The last shall be the first. All coming from the guy who's buying private jets and stuff like that up on the stage. You see what I'm saying? They have institutionalized the Bible to convince you that it's nothing more than a roadmap or an instruction manual that only they can interpret for you. But I'm here to tell you right now that no, that's false. It's an actual living, breathing word. Many of you are like, I've never heard the voice of God. I've heard that you can hear the voice of God, but I've never heard it. Well, it's because you read the Bible. You ask a question in your pain and in your suffering. That's what I did. I stepped away from Western world churchianity that taught the roadmap and how the Bible ought to be looked at, the instruction manual for life. I stepped away from all that. I took my pain and my suffering and I cracked open that book and I said, Lord, speak to me. And I asked the questions and suddenly it just jumped off the page, right? Don't throw your pearls to the swine. Have nothing to do with these types of people and with those types of people. Yeah, it's in there. God spoke to me. It's okay to go no contacts with your moms, with your dads. Jesus said, I didn't come to bring peace but a sword, and I will divide mother from son and father from daughter and daughter-in-law from what? Whoa, Lord, how come this isn't taught up on the stages? Well, because it's not what the council agreed upon. That's why. It's not a part of their roadmap that keeps people coming back to church and donating so they can buy their airplanes. Now then, if you want me to go further down that hole, I will. But I think this is a good place to pause. I'll be back with more videos for you right here on the Row. If you do need support, head on down to the description box, schedule one-on-one time with me. I'll be back with more videos for you right here on the Royal We. Boom.